So welcome to episode 2, which is on witch hunts, trials and the Witchfinder General. And I'm once again joined with the lovely Lara and the lovely Holly.
Hello.
So yeah,
We did so well last time.
Yes. Yeah, just so well last time we thought we'd bring them back. So, yes.
To make another appearance.
So, I'm going to kick it off with the man himself, the Witchfinder General, who I'm hoping you'll find very interesting. So, Matthew Hopkins, the Witchfinder General, he gave himself this title, may I say, and basically used it.
Back to the ego.
And used it for money, basically.
Oh, nice.
So,
I mean, good for him.
he used to go around towns in East Anglia and Essex. So a lot very godly in this, especially up the East Coast.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Loved God, and he used this to his. You never know. I think it depends on how strong the faith is, and he would make them pay him to find out if there's witches in their towns. So he would go to each town.
That's quite clever.
And they would
making money moves.
And they would be like, "Oh my God, I need a witch finder," or he might go up to them and be like, "Do you think there's witches in your town?" And they might be like, "Oh my God, yeah." And then he could be like, "Well,
give me some money.
Give me money, and I can sort that out for you."
And you would,
so,
wouldn't you? If you're
that petrified, yeah.
Someone's like, "Oh, I can discover if you got witches.
Yeah.
But you've got to pay me." They'd be like, "Take my money. Do it."
You're like, if someone comes up to us nowadays and be like, "I can find out if COVID's going to break out," we're going to be like, "Yeah.
Yeah, give me the money."
Like, I'll just give you however much so I don't want to die.
Yeah. So he helped them to deal with it, basically. So he was moving around during the Civil War in England, and he took heavy advantage, obviously, of these poor people who were scared of witches. So he believed that there were several witches regularly practicing their dark arts close to his home, and apparently began his career as a witch finder after he overheard various women discussing their meetings with the devil in March 1644. Because, women like to sit around and chat about the devil.
We do like to do that.
Yeah.
This podcast, prime example.
So, of the 23 women accused, 4 have said to have died in prison, and the 19 were later convicted and hanged.
So they were. Wow, that is quite extreme. Just from an alleged conversation, he managed to, these poor women died in horrible prison conditions. Was it hanged?
So and then the 19 that didn't die got hanged. So, but if you look at the difference,
19 hanged.
So if you look at the difference between Cranmer, do you remember good old Cranmer from the last episode with Malleus Maleficarum? Failed at his first trial. However, this bloke managed to succeed and kill 23 witches within his first time.
Witches in inverted commas.
Witches.
It's all his word.
Yeah. And 23 people being able to kill, that's basically like mass murder,
So
just under the guise of doing something
But
good.
you can see the time difference. So this is 1644. James is on his way out, I think, at this time. He is or he's on his way out. And you can still see the legacy these things have left, which you're like. So, records of Hopkins' early career in the art of witch hunting are very vague. So, but it appears to have stemmed from when he moved to Manningtree in Essex in 1644. He was a lawyer with a strong background, and it appears to have been his mission to destroy anything to do with the works of the devil. So
he was just a rich guy who happened to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
And was like, right, here
not
we
a very
go.
good one.
I don't like the devil. I don't like women. What can I do about it?
Yeah, exactly. Not a very good lawyer, because if you had to, So it appears to have assumed the title of Witchfinder General in 1645. So he'd self-proclaimed
made up a role for himself.
The fact that he literally could do that though.
Yeah.
Like, he did it and
imagine me going one day without no training, just going, right, I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
That's it. I'm going to practice medicine.
Yeah.
I don't have any qualification. I mean, no one now would believe me or, take that. But in those days...
I'm an astrophysicist. I am going to go to space.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an astronaut and I'm going tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So claiming
Give me your money.
Yeah.
So he has claimed to be officially commissioned by Parliament itself with the brief to uncover and prosecute witches. So he was claiming government had gone, this little fella, ex-lawyer, you're going to be our Witchfinder General because you're that experienced,
Or do we not know if that's true or not, though?
So he claimed to be.
Oh, okay.
So I'm guessing it's a lie, but you never know, do you? Together with his entourage, that concluded a merry band of lady prickers, which I will come over to.
Did you just say lady prickers?
Yeah, though I'll come over to that name later on, I think.
Okay, that's quite intriguing.
They travelled the villages and towns of eastern England trying to examine women for witchcraft. So basically, lad's holiday, but going around England looking for witches and killing them.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
It's a fun, like...
It's just awful, isn't it?
And the fact that he literally did that. No one seemed to, I mean, I'm not sure, but no one seemed to question him. He kind of just went, I'm going to do this, and then did.
Yeah.
It's really,
people joined in.
And we're talking about history right now, but all these things are things that have actually happened. And I feel like sometimes we feel so far away from the past that it's hard to imagine all this. Like, that's what life was like. But it's quite a shocking reality, really, isn't it?
So his claim a reasonable price, said to be 20 shillings a town. So although the records reveal that a small market town of Stowmarket paid £23 for shillings for his services, a true entrepreneur, Hopkins appeared to have quickly turned his mission into a well-paid career, so much that local taxes were even being levied in order to fund his obsession.
So, do we know how much that is in sort of modern day, or
I couldn't tell you, but 20 shillings.
Is that a lot? Okay.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
That sounds like a lot for old time. I mean,
especially for...
I can do a quick Google.
Was it pound and shilling?
Yeah, so just shillings, so 23 shillings. Yeah. It's just like...
And did you say that the tax...
So that he got that big that even taxes were giving him money to...
change the taxes so people had to pay for his work.
So he was getting a proportion of people's tax money.
It's like an old day entrepreneur.
He's not shit. I mean, if I was in his position, I'd do the same.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, you're trying to make a livelihood for yourself. So.
Exactly. So, the methods that he adopted to investigate these cases of witchcraft were taken directly from King James the First bestseller Demonology, guys.
Oh, yeah.
So, taken from Malleus Maleficarum inspiration to demonology. And although considerably less violent than those methods adopted in mainland Europe, they did include keeping the suspect awake for days on end, resulting in the suspect now suffering from sleep deprivation and basically... So yeah, these people were suffering from sleep deprivation, basically being coerced to confess. So when you're that tired and being tortured by this horrific method, you're going to confess.
Anyone would confess in that situation.
Exactly.
I don't think anyone has the mental strength to withhold that.
Exactly.
At all.
Yeah, and that's probably why it continued on for so long, because it was, if people are claiming, admitting that they are witches, you're going to go, well, they just said they are, so you're going to believe them. So then it carried on. It's like, well, these people have been found to be witches.
Like a domino effect.
So then, so it just continues on for ages and ages. Because everyone is like, oh, there's still witches around because they confess.
Exactly. So, Hopkins' favourite confessional method, you can tell what type of bloke this man is because he had a favourite confession. Yeah. Of torture, favourite confession of torture was torture basically, but the infamous swimming test was his number one.
Oh, okay.
And I will go
I
in.
haven't heard about this.
Oh, it's
Lucky you. So,
it's a long one.
Unbelievably simple but effective. So it involved binding the arms and legs to the accused to a chair before throwing them into a village pond. Or water or stream or river normally. If they sank and drowned, they would be innocent and go to heaven. But if they floated, they would be tried as a witch. And they floated because they believed the devil was... Because, the idea of baptism and Jesus was submerged. The devil would pull them out of the water and that's the spirit coming out. So if they floated and they survived...
They'd be burnt.
You'd be blocked out and die anyway.
Yeah. So even if you're quote-unquote innocent... Or quote-unquote, again, guilty, allegedly, you die either way.
Yeah, so
you cannot win.
To find out if you're innocent.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah. If you die, you're innocent.
It's basically it's all kinds of illegal and, I mean, I don't know what was legal back then, but that can't be right.
So between the years of 1644 and 46, Hopkins and his associates are believed to have been responsible for the deaths of 300 women.
Wow.
And in the day,
it was all women.
All
not
women.
This time. Like last time when we were talking about the men, it's all women.
And in the days when the average farm worker's wage was just 6p a day. So you think he's charging 23 shillings and their wage 6p a day. Wow. And it's estimated that Hopkins may have collected fees of around £1,000 for his gruesome services.
So he was basically being paid to murder innocent women.
Yeah.
When you boil it down, that's what it is.
Yeah.
He's getting really money to murder women
that aren't
witches. Well, allegedly witches, but there's no proof, there's nothing.
Because of these, horrible men that like killing witches, he produced some piece of writing on it. So he wrote a short pamphlet. He wrote a short pamphlet detailing his witch hunting methods called The Discovery of Witches, and it was published in 1647.
There's a book called The Discovery of Witches, a TV show, worth checking out. Yeah.
And his death was very unclear. So some accounts say he drowned from undergoing his own swimming trial, but after being accused of witchcraft himself. So that's one claiming of how he died. So
I wish that did happen as some karma.
If he did die like that, I think everyone would be happy.
Yeah.
But
so we don't actually know how it ended.
But I mean, he made thousands of pounds for running around.
I mean, he was basically a businessman, wasn't he? Yeah. He was like, I can make money off people's fear, really.
So basically, he kicked off the whole, you can make money out of this. Because obviously, but at first it was the king, and the king will probably have advisors to help him with this, or torturers, like executioners would have helped him. However, this was the start of people making their own money out of it without, not the king's permission, but without doing it for the king.
So profiting off this.
They're profiting off their own accord using a method that, everyone's scared of.
Yeah. So, and people just accepted this as well. Like, you can't argue. It all comes back to, like, what we were talking about last time. Like, you can't argue. You can't, like, there's no fairness or justice or equality or anything at play here.
There's nothing. But I think I do touch on it later, but I'll chat a bit about it now, which is men got ideas from Matthew Hopkins and decided to become witchfinders themselves, which again is the BBC 2 series, The Witchfinder, shows. So it shows the amount of men, and people would literally fight over witches. So if they heard there's a coven of witches, which is like a little hidey hole full of witches, and they used to, sit and do spells together, they would go and literally fight over it, and whoever your ranking could heighten or go down with the Witchfinder General, depending on how many witches you could. And that it's all for, like, status. That's all it was about. Yeah. And people making money easily.
Also, it's just like, think about it, as a woman, you'd probably be scared to meet, like, I probably wouldn't be, there's three of us sat here having a chat, but if there were three of us sat here having a chat, in those days, it might have been like, they're plotting.
Yeah. Talking about the devil.
Just from chatting.
Yeah, literally. So,
oh my God. It's just crazy to think about, isn't it?
So another website I looked at was Historic UK's Witches in Britain. So moving away from our lovely gentleman Matthew Hopkins, I think we do touch on a bit later.
I don't know if lovely is the right
word.
Lovely!
Yeah. So actually, no, this is about him. So he had 68 people put to death in Bury St Edmunds alone. And 19 hanged in Chelmsford in a single day.
19.
God, my family from Chelmsford. My family could have been hung.
Yeah.
That's so
it's weird to think about.
So after Chelmsford, he set up for Norfolk and Suffolk. So again, this eastern side where people are very religious.
So he's concentrated in one area, kind of. Yeah. And he's going after all those people who are really religious. Yeah. He's like, I know my market. It's almost like he's found his market. Yeah. His gap in the market. Yeah. It's very business-like, isn't it? Businessy. But we forget, it's people's lives. Like, you can't profit off suffering and false accusations. Well, obviously he has, but it's ridiculous.
So, a little town called Aldborough paid him £6 for clearing the town of witches. £6, and King's Lynn 15. Yes, King's Lynn 15 and Grateful Stowmarket 23. At this time when the daily wage was 2.5p.
So you're being paid 2.5p a day, and your town's managed to come up with, what was it, £23? £23 to pay this guy.
Yeah. to find witches.
So imagine you're a guy at the time, and you're working as a labourer or you're working as a builder, and you go and you see these men going around. You know, you get to see some of the countryside. You get to prosecute women because you all hate women, and you get to make money out of it. What a thing I could do. Yeah,
in that time.
Exactly. So he was interested again with the pact with the devil. And again, the idea of sleep deprivation. And he would just like wake them up at random times for several days and just leave them having sleep deprivation, which then lead to confession.
It's like modern, well, I'm not a massive expert on modern torture, but it is like torture methods, isn't it?
So Elizabeth Clark was his first victim. That's all I seem to know. But obviously he's had a range over the years. So torture was mainly used in Europe, but not in England. So they wouldn't like full on torture them, strap them. But it was the sleep deprivation that was used in England.
Yeah, it's a lot of mental torture as well. It's not all... they've kind of moved away from the whole physical thing and like just drained you mentally.
Yeah, they already thought women were weak, weren't they?
So the key,
them weaker
the key part was they looked for a sign of the devil. And I will again go on later to talk more about this in detail. So birthmark, skin tag, they would normally be in secret places on the body. So So if you look at yourself right now, each of you have a birthmark.
Yeah, I've got one on my ankle.
Tiny one on my neck.
But we all have beauty spots as well.
Oh yeah.
So that's mark of the devil.
Oh.
Exactly, like cuts, bruises. I think anything,
bruises
or anything like odd, or like if you've had a heel cut, but it's like chilling, and they're like
a scar.
Yeah, they're like.
I mean, I've got loads of scars. I'm very clumsy, by my nature. We all know, but yeah.
So you could be classed as being marked by the devil. So yeah, it is insane.
Would they go out and look for people with these kind of things, or would it be an after fact?
So I think if a woman was accused of being a witch, so again we'll use the idea of killed a pig next door, killed a cow, they would obviously take her in for questioning. She would be stripped. She'd be searched. If anything odd, and I will again go into more detail about this later, however, and then they'd search for imperfections on her, and if they found that imperfection, then that's another piece of evidence to class she's a witch. So they use these imperfections as evidence, basically. Okay. So next I am going to be going to talk on about the ways of dealing with witches. So this next piece of information is taken from You're Dead to Me podcast by I can't even get that.
Professor Susanna Lipscomb.
Thank you. So basically, it was an imaginary crime. So you could be accused of raising a storm, meeting with the devil. And in 1590, local accusations of witchcraft were being around, and people were fearful of being named as a witch, basically. So if anything, a witch, if you were stood outside while it's pouring down with rain, you're a witch. You could be, summoning the devil through the weather. And God's there to... So this is what people would claim. So if a woman witch was put on trial, or, with the swimming method, they believed that God was there to protect the witch if she's actually innocent. So if she's guilty, obviously she's going to come up and then you'd... Yeah. So if God believes she's guilty, God will prove it. Basically, is there.
So we're still in very pious kind of,
religion is everything.
Yeah. Religion is
so yeah, that's that bit. And then, so there's a really great podcast called the Witch Hunt podcast, and it's BBC Scotland have created it. I think this one. So an example of how people question witches, so I've got quite a good one. So David Seaton, he was from an influential family at the time, was aware of the coming and going of his servant, Keely Duncan. So these guys are in Scotland. So she was very weak and manipulated, and she was arrested and she was tortured by him in their own house. And... And the way of torture was thought of being an easy way to get something out of someone, and believed that justice would be passed.
So he was a master of a house, and he thought one of his servants was seen as weak. Yeah,
if she was like coming and going in weird times of the day, she would have days off, and she was going to odd places. That's what suspicions would have probably kicked off.
Okay.
So she starts to say that she was meeting with the devil. got a pact and a meeting with other witches and having feasts and dancing, and they were summoning storms to attack the king and his new bride. So she has claimed this.
Oh, so she's self-implicated herself there.
Yes. So
Wow.
it could have been...
Yeah.
But again, I'll go on to talk about the idea of a higher man than you. If he's telling you you're something, you're going to admit to it because you don't talk to men of higher standard.
Do we know, what do we think, because she said that because he was
So what I've had when I've looked at articles and the way they've explained it is basically because a woman at that time, if you were a peasant, you would very rarely talk to men of higher standing than you.
Yes.
A man who's, the household you're looking after, he's rich, he has money, he's telling you these things, again bringing in the idea of illiteracy, not really knowing much, and that's brought in, you're going to be like, well, he says that, so I must be. So I'm guessing a lot of people confess to this.
So we're not sure if she's actually confessing this or this is him guessing this, supposedly
manipulating it.
Her
okay.
Her going, okay,
which we were talking about earlier as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, many demonologists at this time came from all across Europe. So these were like the witch hunters, kind of, and they were all in Europe due to obviously the circulation of Malleus Maleficarum, demonology, all these books. And they would write books about demons, spirits and the devil and how witches fit into that, boring things like that, to try and make more money. And they came to believe that a sector of heretics worshipped the devil directly, deliberately. These were known as witches. So these are these guys over in Europe. This is what they're thinking. So it was a new idea in Christian thought at this time, and it starts in eastern France and Switzerland and then spreads through Western Europe. So this is where influences of Europe you can start seeing in what I've explained earlier on.
So what we talking about, the witch trials and stuff that were happening in England, would this have been the same all over Europe?
So I think the way they did it over Europe, so each country had the way of executing witches.
Okay, so it depends.
But that example when I talked in episode 1 with the North Berwick trials were inspired by the Danish. Okay. So I think everyone just had inspiration from everyone else,
and they just were like, "Oh, what more ways can we torture these poor women?"
Yeah.
Did they travel?
So these demonologists are going all over Europe, going,
so
spreading words, and that's how people obviously moved and changed their ways, really.
It's quite interesting that it was everywhere, that it wasn't just refined to one country, it was it was everywhere.
Yeah, just a massive thing.
So
no one was safe really from the sounds of it. No one was getting away from this.
No.
So again, what I just touched on a little earlier was, the fact about having men of high station talking to you. And imagine you have an educated man. So you're, we'll say, uneducated. You're a housewife, you don't really do much, but this has happened to you, and you've got an educated man telling you're a witch, and then you're kind of falling into that trap, aren't you, of believing it, maybe I am.
Yeah, well, I suppose, if we're comparing it to nowadays, if someone, say a scholar or something from, Cambridge or Oxford University came up to me and they were, a psychologist or something, and they were telling me that my brain was working some kind of way, and that's why certain things happening to me, I probably would believe them.
I think anyone would,
higher up.
Well, it's even the news as well.
More, and you're going to think that they're more intelligent and more educated.
Even, bringing it back to modern day as well, news-wise, people will believe things that they've read, on a newspaper, but there's no fact behind. There could be no fact behind that.
Newspapers nowadays are opinion,
and there could be it could be opinion, it could be fake news. I think people are. It's psychologically, the human brain is very trusting. I don't know how much scientific evidence there is to back that up, but I feel like it feels like that. People are easily manipulated, and I think they would have been back
also
then.
The massive class system,
especially
if you're of lower class, your mindset is going to be of that lower class, and that you are lower, quite literally lower, middle, high. If someone of high class is telling someone of low class, they're higher than you, so you're going to listen.
In those days, definitely. Yeah.
So again, there was no signs of for these poor people of this person might stop torturing you. So you're being tortured and you're thinking, I don't know when this is going to stop. There could be a way of me getting out. I'll give them what they want, basically. So confession was basically the best option for them to get it out. And just give the interrogator what they want to hear, basically. And then once you've told the interrogator, you're going to carry on, aren't you? Trying to make your story so they don't keep interrogating you. So again, if you're a poor woman, like the example I used earlier, and a well-educated man has questioned and talked to you, like the first time you ever may have talked to them, and people are listening to you in a sense and are like, it's like in a sense of a dog, like someone's applauding you, like, yes, this is what we want out of you, this is what we want your confession.
Like it's performance, isn't it? And people found this kind of thing entertaining. Was that true? Like
would people go watch the trial?
So burnings and hangings, family day out, that's how they used to describe it.
So people went mad for this stuff, as long as it wasn't directed towards them.
Yeah.
So
really encouraged with it.
So the interview would consist of questioning about the devil. Marks, so they would ask you questions like, did you meet with the devil? When did you meet with him? If you said yes, when? When did these marks show up? Have they shown up recently? Were you born with them? Like weird and wonderful questions that, could link you to the devil or anything like that. So they believed that the devil was stupid enough to leave marks on the witches. Right. So this is how they, that's how they believed. Yeah. So they believed, well, you've been touched by the devil because he's an idiot and left a mark on you. Tracks. So they believed that these marks were anywhere, so they would strip these women naked and they would shave them. Because obviously shaving wasn't a thing back then, they would shave everything. And it could be any mark, birthmark, beauty spot, anything abnormal, really. So, again, if you're not socially conformed, what we've talked about constantly, you're going to...
anything outside of what these people had in their minds as the right thing, or even though it wasn't right, that's it, you're done for.
Yeah, it was ultimately put down to being a witch.
Yeah. So, these men who performed these were known as lady prickers. Coming back to the lady prickers.
That's where that comes from, okay.
So they would follow the lead of Hopkins, and their own form of torture was to mark a prick with a large needle. So an insatiable mark. So if they felt no pain or didn't bleed, they were a witch. So...
where were they? Do you know where they were pricking them? Because
I think it depends. So this is where it comes in. So an example they used in this podcast was... So an example of this is acupuncture. When you have acupuncture and you're punctured with tiny needles, you do not bleed.
No.
So there are some areas where you don't bleed and feel no pain. So if you're one of those people who...
well, it's just because the needle's so tiny.
Exactly.
You can't feel it. Yeah.
So you get when you get blood tests done, they put it in a certain place where the veins are, so they can draw blood. So there's going to be places where
so
they
kind
of cut it off anyway. Yeah.
Where you won't draw blood. So if they're pricking them there, then they're obviously not gonna...
So it's just mad.
So they would prick people, and if they didn't bleed, it doesn't matter where
they didn't bleed or feel pain, and didn't matter where, and they're like,
you're a witch.
You're a witch. But if you did, obviously, but they could still use compelling evidence and they're wanting a confession, which could leave the torture on longer. Then they're going to get a confession out of you later on. So this is again from that Matthew Hopkins history website, this piece of information. So much of Matthew Hopkins' theories on the deduction were based on devil's marks. A wart, a mole, or even a flea bite he could take as a devil's mark.
So is this where that kind of concept of witches being these old women with warts and their hats, and that's where that comes from? Okay.
And he used his jabbing needle to see if these marks were insensitive to pain. His needle was a 3-inch long spike which retracted into the spring-loaded handle, so the unfortunate woman would never feel any pain. So the needle was even prepped for, It
also seems that because obviously our justice system nowadays is, you're innocent until proven guilty. It seems with the witches you were guilty until proven innocent.
That's
so even if the trials didn't work, one of them didn't prove that you're a witch, they just move on to the next one.
And they keep going until they found some sort of... or you were just so emotionally and physically drained that you'd confess anyway.
So there was no way of getting out of it.
No, exactly.
You're trapped in this system that's built against you and your whole gender. Essentially.
So... this was back to that podcast this information is taken from. Compelling evidence, any compelling evidence they've been marked by the devil, you're a witch, basically. These women, so many of these women who were obviously stripped naked, shaved, were from very conservative small villages, and some of them wouldn't even leave their hair uncovered. So for them, horrifying process.
It's just
desperate for it to be
shaming,
over,
isn't it? It's that's quite a violation of your privacy and your being.
Body,
So again, the idea, I want this to stop. you're going to confess.
Yeah.
Because you're wanting this horrible thing you're going through to stop.
You've got all these men coming at you and like trying to prove you're guilty.
Yeah.
Again, we keep saying it. It's scary. There's no way out. I think that's been a running theme throughout all of it.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot get out. You can't escape.
So I've got some fun questions that I thought I'd throw in halfway through. Okay. So, if you were a person living at this time, how would you try and defend yourself from a witch, from a witch's, you know?
So are you saying if we were accused, how would we try?
No, so if you were a neighbour and you're going, she's a witch, how would you protect yourself? What do you think you would do? I know it's hard to put yourself into their shoes. So
I mean, so if you're trying to accuse someone and you're trying to not implicate yourself, how would you go about doing that?
So try and defend it.
Ooh,
so many
it's an interesting one. Because I feel like in that time the men were so, you know, they ran the house. I feel like, I don't know if I would obviously have ideas, but it probably would be up to the man in the end to kind of decide what we would do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'd have the power to like accuse.
I think the two methods that I think people would have used: have a little prayer, and tell on them. Yeah. If you get rid of the problem, then you'll be saved, and if you pray, you will.
Yeah, so
if you pray, you're getting rid of your sin. You're getting rid of the devil.
If that's a neighbour who's pissed. Who's annoyed you?
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, all right, you're a witch. Yeah, get out.
And the other question is, would you agree to a confession if you were in that situation?
I think anyone would. I think
it's the natural thing. If you're being tortured, and you kind of, any smart person would realise that there's no way out.
There is. There's no way out.
You're gonna have to be fair, they're gonna keep torturing you until you're pretty much dead anyway.
And
I mean, not physically dead.
And this was in the later times, because obviously Helena, who we learned about earlier, you know, she got out of it because she had as a child, but that was before it was this that was when it was a religious thing rather than this massive societal legal thing.
So this next bit is from the English Heritage website, A History of Witches. So people were desperate to defend their bodies, their houses from witches. So you have to keep to the rules. If you suspect one of your neighbours is a witch, do not ever let her have the last word in a conversation.
That's such a...
That's very weird.
I know. So this is probably what is written in one of these books.
Casting a spell?
Yeah. Or like, if she has the last word, then she's got power over you.
Yeah. So anything she says must be thrown back at her before it infects you. So, yeah.
So they thought words could infect you?
Yeah. Basically.
Wow.
Because it's the words of a spell, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I guess people...
How do you throw someone's words back at them?
You've got to have that last say, don't you?
Okay.
So I hope you have a good day. I hope you have a good day too. And that could be the end of the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I guess, like, the whole... We obviously think it's quite crazy that words could be used to cast a spell or something, but I guess the whole basis of religion is that, like, miracles and obviously Jesus, there's stories in the Bible where Jesus would say words and actually heal someone, so it's kind of like ingrained into their
and it's prayers as well, isn't it? It's saying things that you want, you know. They thought their prayers were going to be true because they all had this devout belief in God.
To them, words is actually quite a big thing because it's part of their life, it's part of their religion.
So don't let her give you anything, especially anything connected with food, and extra especially food itself. Do not let her cross your threshold. Use a witch marks to stop her from crossing into your house or from allowing her familiars to cross into your house.
Were familiars their pets? Was that?
I'm guessing so, yeah. And also marks, so again, that Witchfinder TV series, BBC. If you see in the episode where the main woman, Thomasine, who's been accused of a witch, if you watch it, and the house has a massive red X on the door, so kind of showing you're repenting the devil.
Yeah. It's like the Ten Commandments, which we talked about again, isn't it? With all the things in Egypt, where they put the cross on the door, and then the firstborn sons walk in. Passover, I mean, my religious history isn't great, but that seems to link to that a little bit, like the condemning of people
and like the markings.
And it's
all
that
religion.
Big, like, red, like, no. Yeah. You know? Like, it's almost damning, isn't it, really?
So, witch marks are ancient boundary of spells. One of the most common is the interwoven initial of M for the Virgin Mary, which persists long after Catholicism had been forbidden. Another spiral in which roaming eternity will get lost. So basically using Mary, the mother of Jesus, to help you repent from witches. Which, useful. And then this was taken from one of the Matthew Hopkins websites, and the last execution for a witch in England took place in Exeter, Devon, when Alicia Morland was put to death in March 1684.
So this is the last execution?
One of the last.
One of the last, okay.
Just going back to the whole Mary thing, just like, I was just thinking about how, they had their 3, like, signs in a woman to be a witch, just like ambition, lust and infertility. Well, she was pretty much the opposite of those things. She had no ambition because she did what God told her to do. She had no lust because she was a virgin, and she was fertile because she gave birth to baby Jesus. So it's like a massive, like, be like Mary kind of thing.
Because Mary was their a man's perfect model of what a woman should be, submissive, like she just had Jesus, and then that was it. I mean, I know people worship Mary for having him, but that wasn't off Mary's back. That was off the fact that she had Jesus, and it was God who put the baby in her. Like nothing is. There's not. It's not. They're not worshipping Mary there. They're believing in the men who had done that to her. I guess if you believe in that kind of thing. So even though it looks like that, it's still all based in misogyny.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm now going to talk about the execution of witches. Witches can get a bit gruesome, this part. I'm warning you, pre-warning you now. So from Your Dead to Me podcast, this was what they said about execution. So some of the most common ways of executing witches included beheading or hanging, the most common in England due to the fact they were condemned by treason rather than heresy. So hanging was common in England. Okay. So again, that whole idea of treason, it's treason, not heresy. Because if you were convicted of heresy, you would have been burnt. Again, the idea, releasing the devil. Again, with the swimming trials, releasing the devil.
So it all links back to the devil.
So burning was used in Scotland, seen as a sign of heresy, but also drowning was very common. Women tied, dropped in a river, swimming trials, as used by Hopkins. So, yeah, if she died, she was known as a good Christian woman. If she was floating, then obviously she'd be burnt. So you get no way out. If you got a swimming trial, you are dead.
Pretty much.
So an example of very unfair trials. Again, Outlander can be watched on Prime Video. And this was in series 1. And basically, this woman got angry at the main character, Claire, because it's all over a man. And basically, she accused her and her friend of being witches. So she was taken and put on trial. So this was an evidence of a trial. Right. So this trial was very unfair. So they were both put in a box. They did have one of their close friends, a man, defending them, but that's only because obviously they believed he knew them and didn't believe they were witches. So many witches weren't even put on trial, but they were always one-sided. So basically, they had the guy defending them, but then they had prosecutioners. They had 3 people that came up and spoke to them, even though obviously one of them was the woman that told the men that she was a witch. Another one, it was all lies, and then it's lies, but
it's
they're just saying
everything is stacked against you. Like it's like being in a court where the jury already thinks you're guilty without hearing the evidence, really, isn't it?
So they needed
you've
to
got
provide
one lawyer compared to 5 or 10 lawyers.
Yeah, so they needed witness statements for you being a witch. So many would be like, well, I saw you midnight this night crossing the town square, or I saw you dancing around a fire, summoning the devil.
Also, like, people, if you got asked, like, you're a friend of that person, you need to testify that she is a witch. You're not going to go no, because then people are going to think you're a witch.
Yeah. So what in this trial, which was
turning on everyone. Yeah.
This trial was interesting because 2 of them were put on trial at the same time, and the guy goes up to Claire, the main character, and he says, there's one way of getting one of you out of this. If you say the other one seduced you into becoming a witch, you will go free. Yeah. So in the end, she had to do that. So. It was really sad. I was like, come on, guys. But yeah. So many jobs were made out of the witch hunt trials and stuff. Yeah.
Hopkins his business.
Yeah. Man Hopkins, yeah. So a very good way of earning money, and they used to go town to town. And yeah, just Witchfinder again, that series, great. It does show you funny historical knowledge.
I think people find history easier to absorb, don't they, when it's
but again,
funny or easier to understand, because this is quite like, when we talk about this is really, it's quite deep stuff. Like, it's basically rooted in misogyny and hating women and men trying to become more powerful. Like, that's very hard hitting, and I think that's sometimes quite hard to talk about, especially in modern day.
Next episode, episode 3, is talking about modern day, so I will go into a lot more detail of how it's produced in the media and stuff like that, because it is really interesting. So the next section was taken from the book Holly Let Me Again, from Unwell Woman by Elinor Cleghorn. So we're going to go back to good old Malleus Maleficarum, written by Cranmer. Again,
key book.
Very key. It's brought up a lot.
From what I've heard, I think this would be considered the start of it all, really, to be honest.
And so we know how influential it is. Nice. It's literally like second to the Bible, I think, in how popular it was. So acts of heresy must be dealt by inquisitors, and anyone suspected brought to justice by any means necessary, which was the way they claimed. So it broadened that witchcraft entailed anyone who was likely to practice it. So any ordinary person, but especially women who transgress social and moral boundaries, would be accused of witchcraft by anyone. And it was worse in rural villages. So again, you're a spinster, you're not married by the age of 20, she's odd, she's not conforming to social norms, she must be a witch.
It's that small town mentality as well, isn't it? Like, if
everyone knows everyone.
Everyone knows everyone, everyone's in everyone's business. Like, everyone's going to know if someone's, different or not confined with the social norms, and that was a death sentence, basically.
So fears around everyday unknowns meant that fingers would point to anyone who perceived to be up to no good. So if anything happened in a village that, isn't natural. So if it was an unnatural way to die, so if obviously if someone died in their sleep, you would claim that's a natural way to die. But if someone died from illness, you'd be like, you went near him yesterday.
That's a lack of education as well, though, isn't it? Like, I think a lot of it comes from just people not understanding. Like, medicine wasn't very advanced then, was it? So
I think it wouldn't start up in nowadays 100%, because we are so much more, education is such a big thing, but because there was so much poverty, so much lack of education, lack of knowledge, like people were illiterate, like they don't have the
you're going to believe what you've been
told, or the knowledge to even question it.
If you haven't been taught things as well, you're going to believe anything. Like, it's people are so easily impressionable, I guess, back then. That it doesn't matter how not lack of knowledge or how uneducated you are, you're going to believe anything.
Because you don't have the resources to even argue.
Because that's not even available.
No. So once a suspected person, so it's usually an older woman, brought to trial, they would listen to the witness accusations, and then people would search her home for any witchcraft-related items and interrogate her with questions like, why did you touch the child before it got sick? While the court, while the court was considering the evidence accused, she would be imprisoned, stripped of her clothes, and shaved again. They love a bit of stripping and shaving.
It's all a violation of privacy, isn't it? Your home, your body.
But it's all a whole violation, really.
And he believed witches often sewed articles of their crafts into their garments or even skin. So again, that idea of you've got something odd on your arm. What have you sewn into that? Gosh. So if none of these items they were looking for, so I'm guessing it's books, I'm guessing it's puppets of people, I'm guessing it's weird runes, I'm guessing it's odd little things, like, why is that in your house? They would order doctor or male physicians and respected midwives to search her for unusual traits to do with the female anatomy, basically. So once this was found, the court would use this as an extract for confession.
So literally the way you're born and how your body is could be used if it wasn't what, again, was considered quote-unquote normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think people would make it up as well? Because if the midwives, you know, they're going to want to accuse this person.
Yeah.
Not the midwives, but people in general are going to want to say this person is a witch because they want a reason behind everything.
Exactly.
So there might have been like a point where people are making things up because no one can really question them. If they're the only ones that can do it, and you know someone has told them this has happened or they need to do this, they probably, you know, they could make stuff up.
I think the social aspect of it comes into it as well. Like people wanted witches. Like they didn't want them because they didn't want the, you know, the so-called things that witches did. But they, you know, you were saying earlier how a trial was like entertainment.
Yeah.
Like they are not profiting, but they're getting their entertainment and their, you know, spark of life out of the prosecution.
For people, it was an exciting thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't normally happen. Normally, you're down. If you're a farmer, you're down the fields every day. You get Sunday off, but you'd go to church.
Yeah.
Nothing like this. And when stuff like this would happen, obviously it would rile a huge crowd of people.
Also, you probably think you were doing good. So if you were one of those midwives and you're like, wow, this person has some sort of abnormality, like we're going to tell them they can be burned at the stake or whatever, and you know the devil is gone, and I am looking after God, like doing the orders of God and the order of like what the king was, monarchy was saying, and you'd probably just be really praised for that, really.
Yeah, it's almost the more we talk about it, the more it seems like a cult.
Yeah.
Like, and not the witches being the cult, which is what was assumed, but the society being a cult against women, really. And, you know, even women being against women and turning on each other, you know, when they thought that they could imply each other. And I mean, I guess it was men as well. We heard, you know, in the first episode that it wasn't just women prosecuted, but it's kind of like a cult where everyone just turns on each other. Yeah. Like, you can't, you know, you can't be safe from anyone.
You can't get away from it.
No.
So, again, the ways... So recommended torture methods by our favourite man. So to be bound, pierced with needles, dunked in water, deprived of food, drink and sleep, made to carry red hot iron and other things to help them confess. So they believed that this was the way to get someone in a nice way to confess, you know.
Also the way that they help, like they've been completely under the influence of the devil. You need to help them. They're like drastic. I mean, like. They're not in a good place. The devil is in them. You have to help them. Like, they have no will about themselves.
What would people like? Would witchfinders think they were helping these women?
I think witchfinders felt that they were ridding the world of things that were wrong.
They were doing good. Like doing good, and they thought this was the right.
So again,
thing.
the idea of James believing he's one with God because he's against. You know, with the devil, you know, he's fighting the devil, and it's that whole belief. So again, if you've not eaten, drunk or slept in days, you're obviously going to start hallucinating. So induced hallucinations would be interpreted as possession by the devil. So if you look possessed, if you're hallucinating, they think you've got the devil in you.
Even when you've just been tortured so much.
Yeah.
I mean, were they really that stupid that they couldn't make the correlation that torturing someone was going to give them hallucinations? Yeah.
So,
or they realised it and they just didn't care.
They didn't want to realise.
Yeah.
So if found guilty of a more serious offence, she'd be held in prison and tortured until she confessed again to that other offence. So it's just like constant torture, basically. And an easy way to get out is to confess. But then they don't know what they're getting themselves into.
It's basically a death sentence, and either way you look at it, and you're either tortured for a long time before you die, or you're not tortured at all before you die, but you end up dying.
As soon as you're accused, you're pretty much sentenced to death.
Yeah. So again, bringing in the idea of either heresy or treason, if the crime was heretic, a sign of heretic, the judge could sentence her to the flames. So you could either be sentenced to the flames or to hanging. However, most of them in England were sentenced to hanging because it was seen as an act of treason against the king.
Okay.
But at times they could be burnt, basically. Yeah. So in the witch hunts, the trials mostly took over in the whole of Europe. So they took most place in Germany, France and England and Scotland. So especially women, you know, unmarried, poor, weird, not normal, or even involved in healing or midwifery could have been cast as witches.
I hate that so much.
Like they're trying to help. healing
You're
and
just trying to
midwifery,
help
that's
and
like
bring babies into the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, you've got some knowledge of, you know, anatomy
Yeah.
and, you know, some early medicine.
Yeah.
You must be, you know, you must be a witch. You must
yeah, like
be
where have you got that
evil.
knowledge from? You
The
don't have
devil's
an
giving you
education.
knowledge. It's like,
Yeah.
they just couldn't accept the fact that females could be anything more than what they were meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. So ancient physicians had decreed that women were at the mercy of their uncontrollable and unruly reproductive organs.
Yeah, so early medicine believed that the uterus, this is in that book as well, Unwell Woman, it's a brilliant book, I wish everyone could read it, it's so good. You know, they thought that the uterus, used to wander through a woman's body and, like, control her thoughts, and they thought it used to secrete stuff, like, evil stuff, like, it was, the uterus was, and the childbearing organs of a woman were the source of all evil, and they believed that that's why women were inferior to them, because they were influenced by this uterus in the middle of them that was just so evil. So, you know, before this all got disproven and stuff, this didn't happen until a lot later, but, you know, the uterus was the source of why women couldn't think as well as men, or allegedly
again,
as clever.
bringing it back to the Bible, as all of it is, Adam and Eve's story again. They believed that the reason why women were given this horrible, grievous task of childbearing was because she ate the apple before she gave it to Adam.
Yeah.
She was the source of the original sin, so God gave
She
this.
instigated this.
So God gave this for women to have to deal with, because, you know, it's their fault. You know, but
It's all Blue and Eve, isn't it?
yeah, it's all blame it all on Eve.
Yeah.
Poor Eve.
So the church insisted on marriage and sex as a state of protection against women and leashing their original sin. So if a woman was married and had children, your original sin, like, you don't need to worry about that.
Yeah.
If you're unmarried, don't have children,
What if it was...
you've got it all in you.
For just one, if you were married, no kids.
Yeah, well, you were seen as
You
a witch
would,
because...
Yeah, because you're infertile,
Yeah.
One thing I was just wondering,
Yeah.
and it's a little slight detour, but would higher class women be accused of being witches? Was that a thing?
I don't think so.
Okay. So
I'm guessing there may have been the odd case.
Mm-hmm.
However, the men didn't... It's all about the ranking.
Yeah.
A higher ranking man could... Obviously, peasants, easier to convict.
Yeah.
However, a higher ranking woman, her husband's going to be like...
Well, we don't know that.
So
but
even in that episode of Outlander, the man Claire gets married to, he is of a high-ranking Scottish family. He comes into the trial and gets her out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like that, because he's like, she's my wife, she's not a witch.
Yeah.
And the people are like, fine, take her, because you're high-ranking, I'm not going to argue with you.
Yeah. Because you know more. Because you
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
ranking.
So it's again more of a class thing as well, and just preying on the people who are most vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So accusing those of witchcraft was a way of asserting male dominance over women. Executing those was a way of purifying these towns of those who couldn't perform these roles.
Wow.
Marrying
So
or
it's-
having children.
It's just getting rid of people who are seen
Exactly.
as, you know, they're just like, it's like they're almost trying to cleanse the world of nothing, really.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
So, would you like to go... Shall we talk about some myths and legends and weird and wonderful things? Because we have a bit more time, so we may as well. So, this was taken from an English heritage website of myths and legends, and I want to see if you two could have a think and see. So this was written... testing you guys. So this was written by Suzanne Purkis, basically.
Okay.
So, witches were burnt at the stake. Just burnt at the stake.
Oh, well, we meant to see if it was a myth or a legend.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we already heard that they were burned at the stake, but it wasn't just the stake, was it?
No.
So I'd say myth.
They're also hung as well.
Yeah.
So I'd say myth also.
So they weren't really in English-speaking countries. Witchcraft was a felony in both England and its American colonies, and therefore witches were hanged, not burned.
Yeah.
However, witches' bodies were burnt in Scotland. They were strangled to death first. Lovely.
Nice.
So yeah, bit of both.
Bit of both, yeah. And that comes back to that treason heresy thing.
Yeah.
So 9 million witches died in the years of the witch persecution. So numbers, I know these, it can differ because obviously...
Depends what reports you read.
Yeah, basically.
I would say that's True.
Yeah, I would say.
I mean, it's a big number.
Yeah, a lot of people were affected by it.
From what we've talked about, it seems like it was a massive thing.
Yeah.
Is that true?
So I'd say
9 million was quite a lot, guys.
Oh,
so
was that too much?
So 30,000 to 60,000 people executed.
We were quite off there, weren't we?
quite far
So yeah. So not that you thought it was a lot, but I think you went a bit too far.
If you think the population was so much smaller at that time.
Exactly. You're thinking about nowadays, guys.
Yeah. Like, that's not a lot.
Yeah, now that's not a lot.
The population of London is like 20 million.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not.
We need to cast our historical minds back.
Yeah.
So King James I was terrified of witches and responsible for their hunting and execution.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do know this because of his lovely book Demonology,
Yes.
which I think you can still read now.
Wow.
Interesting.
That's survived the ages, hasn't it?
It's the second to the Bible.
Wow.
Second to the Bible.
Book, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Malleus Maleficarum.
And witch hunting was really woman hunting since most witches were women.
Yeah, I'd say that was true.
So across Europe, but there was this faction of men that were accused, but it was mainly women.
Yeah.
So, well done, guys.
Thanks.
Can you think of a fantastic fact that I have taught you today?
Oh. I mean, the swimming trials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'd heard of them, but I didn't realise that you'd be dead either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was quite shocking for me. And then a lot about the execution and things like that. Like,
the
and
class thing also.
The class thing's really interesting.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. And how...
And the marks.
The marks,
That's
that's
so
what I was
crazy,
thinking.
like, it's such a small thing.
Yeah.
And I didn't realise being a lady pricker was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and
so true.
like the fact that they would just violate, it's a complete violation of privacy.
And I mean, you look at all of the whole lady pricking now, and there's no evidence to justify what they're doing.
No, it's just money, isn't
they
it?
went, oh, we're going to do that.
Yeah.
Because that obviously just proves it. Like, there's no reason behind it.
There's no
Like,
logic.
if they looked into it, they'd have been like, well, actually, that doesn't prove
Everyone's
what they're a witch
born how
because-
they're born, and I think the fact that you can be prosecuted or accused just from how you're being born,
Exactly.
you know, it's like a lot of things today, really, isn't
Exactly.
it? Back to, it's
Well,
awful.
Anyway, thank you for joining me again.
That's okay.
Appreciate
Thank you for having
it.
us.
And if you'd like a bit more, you can go listen to episode 3, which should be up soon. Thank you.